politician had his hand in the crowd. He took what wasn't his, he lied without shame. But now the tables are turned, justice is claimed. The streets were alive with a joy so rare. As the news spread, hearts filled with care. No more stolen funds, no more lies told. The people cheered, the corrupter was old. Justice served and they saw. The corruptor's fate, it was long. Happy faces, tears of relief. They danced in the streets, their voices unified. Now every morning the sun rises bright. No more shadows, no more deceitful light. The people's voice, it echoed clear. Justice served and the town is free. Justice served, the scales were right. No more stolen goods, no more lies. The town was saved, the people fight. For justice served and they all unite. Justice served, the corrupted fall. The people's hearts now they calm. No more fear, no more small talk. Justice served, the townsmen clap.
Greetings, my ever friends. Good to be able to reach out and talk to you again. I'm glad to bring you another stream of Everett Reinvented, and we're going to talk to Councilwoman Katy Rogers today, an interesting young lady. I had a chance to talk a little bit on the phone with her. She'll be coming on board in a minute to share some of her wisdoms, and we'll talk a little bit about the current events and the positions and her bid for re-election as citywide council. She'll be running again. I did have a chance to hop on over and check out her website. Interesting. She did a lot of work there, breaking down all her positions and platforms, events, campaigns that she did, issue campaigns and things like that. So there's a lot of information there. And it's over at katyforeverett.com, spelling Katy, K-A-T-Y, katyforeverett.com. You can go over and check out her website. And as I say, there's a wealth of information on there. Well done job. Interesting young lady. My understanding, she's a fifth generation Everett resident, graduate of Everett High School. Went to the Montserrat College and got a BA, I think, in photojournalism. I don't know, it might have been in journalism. I did read that she operates her own business, her own photojournalism business, providing images to clients and publications. So, but without any further delay, we'll let Katy tell you the rest of her background. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit about current events, and I hope you will enjoy the stream. So stand by and let's bring on Miss Rogers.
Hi, Walter. Thank you for having me on your show today. You pretty much got the intro correct. I am a fifth generation Everett resident, born and raised in Everett. I did attend Montserrat College of Art, where I studied fine art, and I kind of accidentally got into photojournalism from there. And that situated me in Everett, where I started to see the ins and outs of various council meetings, community meetings, various events, and that was sort of the segue to where I am today as city councilor.
Yeah, you definitely bring a whole bunch of passion to it. So, it's obvious you got some deep roots. It also dawned on me when I started coming onto the scene many, many years ago. Chief of Police last name was Rogers. Is that a relation to you?
Yes, he is technically a cousin of mine.
Oh, okay.
My dad's cousin.
Just curious. I thought about it in hindsight, and I said, I wonder if there's any connection there.
Yep.
But yeah, so you operate your own business. Are you home based?
Yeah. So I have a small studio, which is where I'm sitting in right now. It's a working studio, so it's a bit of a mess. And this is where I do my photography, my art, my business. But a lot of my work, my day job involves going on location to various sites and taking photographs at different events or different locations. So most of my work is on the go.
Of course, I think I mentioned a little bit again 1,000 years ago. I was a studio photographer in Boston. They handled most all the yearbooks in New England at the time. It was Loring Studios, but I did mostly studio portraiture, a few weddings, pre-bridals as they called it. The bride comes in with the bridal gown on. You do all the photographs there. And then I went to Olin Mills and did baby photographs for a while and eventually drifted out of the business. But that was back in the 1980s. So long before digital and all that. And, I was just spending several hours this morning trying to get my little, and I'll call it a studio. It's my kitchen, actually, that I'm in with a green screen behind me, trying to get that all set up. You talk about wires going back and forth, and it's just a pain in the neck. So anyways, currently I'm a student now again. I'm in digital media, so I'm trying to learn, trying to take my old skills and update them a little bit and see what I can do as far as video and, maybe podcasts and things like that. And that's how I got to where we are right now. But back on to you. So coming into it, what was the aha moment for you when you said, I'm going to run for office. I got to get involved in this. I'm going to run for city council.
That's a great question. So I think I've always had a dedication and passion for my community. And I think when I was in high school, the sentiment was that nobody can be successful in Everett unless they leave. There was really a sort of push to go make something of yourself outside of Everett. And I kind of always challenged that status quo. And I've always felt that why can't I make the most of who I am in my own city? So at the time that I decided to finally run for office, I had no desire or aspiration to necessarily pursue council before that. And then COVID happened and there was a lot of change in the photojournalist industry.
Yeah.
And things were escalating. So I was finding that I was going to certain jobs. They weren't like they used to be. There was a lot of social changes, as you know, for every type of work. Tensions were rising and the opportunities weren't quite exactly what I wanted them to be in photography at the time. At the same time, I had heard that Councillor Anthony DePiero was interested in potentially running for at-large, I think, at the time. So I thought that there was going to be an opening in Ward 3. So my original sentiment was, well, maybe I'll run for Ward 3 and, use my skills there because I know I'm passionate about my community and it's only one ward. So if there's an opening, it shouldn't be that much of a challenge. Then, of course, the history there changed, and obviously Anthony did not run for at-large, and he decided to run in Ward 3 again. So it became Anthony DePiero versus Darren Costa. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want to get in between that. I'm not trying to go one-on-one with anybody, really. I really just want to give back to my community and do the best that I can. So I saw, although more ambitious, an opening in the at-large race because there was 5 seats and one of them was opening. So my strategy then became, well, let me just tackle the whole city, and then I'm avoiding a one-on-one confrontation with anybody, and I can go around and I can sincerely say, just give me one of your 5 votes. When people ask me, who am I running against? I don't have anything against anybody. Just give me one of your 5.
But it's interesting if I might interject here because as you and I talked on the phone too, I became schooled in the local political process in Everett years ago, and one thing I know that happens is like the fundraisers is, you even if you're not aligned with somebody, generally you'll still go to their fundraisers. They come to yours. It's it's a quick share the wealth type thing. That's what it comes down to. But implications are drawn out of that no matter what, by certain voters. So if you got one controversial candidate going to somebody who's a newcomer or something like that, people are going to draw inferences on it. I do. I know that.
Sure.
I'm human, but I admit to my feelings in that regard. Um, but nonetheless, what I'm getting at is it's interesting, the way you talk about you really don't care about the alliance issue. When I was looking at the website, your banner picture. Of course, when you look at all those people, and a lot of people in there, by the way,
Thanks.
uh, I started looking at the faces, and I could see a lot of familiar faces
Oh,
that
we're
I know
frozen.
from past political positions,
I think
current
we're
political
frozen.
positions, and things like that. And I said to myself, geez, she
Same.
does swim wide. She goes across the board and talks to a lot of different people. And I chuckled to myself because, as you were just saying, you didn't really care about alliances and things like that. That you're pretty much ready to work with anybody or talk to anybody, whatever. And that was demonstrated in that photograph because there were a lot of different people in there from past political positions, currently running for office, with aspirations to run for office. I just thought it was a pretty impressive array of individuals that are there. So, as I said, people will draw inferences by who's in photographs with you and things like that, and it's just the nature of the business. But you seem pretty well schooled on how to handle all that stuff and have enough veneer to deal with it. So I wanted to ask just a couple. There's couple of, we'll call them hot button issues or whatever, that are coming along. And as I did, I don't know if you had a chance to peek at a couple of streams I did with Rob Van Campen and
Mhm.
Gerline. I like to reemphasize and stress to people that when I ask anybody in your position, for an opinion to something like that, you're not speaking for the council.
Sure.
You're not speaking officially because, number one, I don't want you to get in touch with your colleagues, having to go back there and them saying, what are you doing talking out of school? What are you doing saying no? But still, nonetheless, your ideals, your ideologies, and all that you're bringing to the table there. So I like to know how you feel as an individual counselor, and how you might like to influence the situation, or what you would like to see in the end. So, a couple of the hot button issues. Of course, the main one right now is the longevity payment issues that's going back and forth with the mayor's office, and what may or may not happen there. I mean, it's obviously going to have it's going to be a focal point of the upcoming election. In any kind of debate formats, or just in public comments in general. So, um, two things is the council took a vote, no confidence vote, and that was unanimous
Yes.
on the mayor. Uh, and again, no offense intended, but I was surprised that it was unanimous. I expected a couple of people, in fact, I thought you might be one of them, that wouldn't go along with that. So, it kind of set me back in my chair a little bit. And I said, okay, that's very interesting. But the not, I don't know if it was before that. I think it was before that. The only one that ever called for Carlos DiMaria's resignation was Council President Martin's, that I heard, unless any other councilor had called for his resignation. So, what I'm asking you in my long winded question is individually,
Yep.
where do you think, when this chapter of DiMaria administration is closed, how do you think this should end? Where should what is the proper thing? I mean, obviously, most of the council, or at least if anybody thought he should resign, didn't voice it. Like I said, Stephanie Martins did, but some may harbor that feeling. I don't know. So, but what is an appropriate resolution? Is for the offense is resignation? Is that a fair call?
Well, I do think it is an election year. So I think that part of the process is letting the people speak and vote on that. Because ultimately, one of the challenges with this entire issue as a council is that we don't really have the authority, for instance, to get the money back, or even for our own attorney. We have checks and balances where we have to ask the mayor to approve the attorney, so it it's not as if we are working together on that issue. So there's not really a resolution that I think that the council can bring forward. I think that that is going to be up to the voters of Everett.
But what should the voters expect? What's the fair expectations by the voters? Is restitution, does that satisfy the nature of the offense, or are we talking about something that's more egregious here and should carry a more significant penalty, such as a resignation or referral to AGs or things like that? I mean, is this okay? Maybe I should put it this way: is trust recoverable at all for Carlo Di Maria after this incident?
I think personally, I try to look at every issue one by one. So am I gonna, if we're talking about trees or a new building, am I gonna think back to that longevity on that subject? No, I'm gonna look at the issue that's in front of me. That doesn't mean I agree with the longevity, but I'm gonna work with what I've got. So if the people of Everett vote for Mayor Carlo Di Maria, then I'm gonna have to work with that administration. If they vote for Robert Van Campen, gladly work with that administration well. So I kind of am in the position of I'm only one of 11. So I kind of have to roll with the punches of what I have and recognize that my authority only goes so far.
You have to dance with who brought you to the ball, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah, a fair enough answer there. So the one that seems to be getting under everybody's skin, and I admittedly I haven't crunched numbers or anything like that, but the headline du jour right now seems to be about the TIF and the I can't even think of that Fulcrum, the
Sure.
Fulcrum Group. And by the way, I was under the impression I had the wrong Scott Brown. Scott Brown, I know, was
The
a
politician.
yeah, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Mass Army National Guard and a politician, as you know. But I tried to do a little online work and read into Scott Brown. He's definitely an accomplished man, nonetheless. But so I'm sure, it's amazing the few streams I've done and the little bit of stuff I put out there. I get a lot of emails just like you do. I get people who want me to do videos on this, streams on this, and da 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 da. I turn down more than I actually do, but it is flattering, nonetheless. So, it goes back to this TIF and this Fulcrum issue. Um, I'm seeing just a lot of dissatisfaction from the residents. So it sounds like the volume is pretty loud on the opposition to this. And I believe you were one of the yes votes on going forward 2 weeks ago, right? Right. And what was it? A 9-3, 9-2?
Might have been 8-3.
But there was a majority. There was a majority favor that went forward. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive my simple-mindedness, but this is kind of where I personally lose my perspective. I mean, I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not an Everett resident, but my good friends are there, and I think a lot of them, so I follow all this stuff. I didn't crunch the numbers side by side. A recent number that I just saw said there'd be like a $28 million difference at the end of that period. What is it, 14-year period that they're looking for?
Yes, 14 years.
At the end of that 14-year period, that you're looking at a difference of about $28 off the table for the city of Everett versus $28 million more if there was no TIF. Does that sound reasonably close?
I don't
Would
have
you know?
exact numbers in front of me, but I do know that there probably is, that could be feasible. I won't discredit it.
What I'm setting the foundation for here is in the hard pressed times that the city is in, and I honestly think you're going to really be in a fiscal crisis come next year, because I think a lot of the chickens are going to go home to roost. If you know what I mean, there's a lot of lawsuits in play right now. There might be a couple more coming down the road, and the kind of protection that the city has had through insurance companies and stuff is probably not going to be there to that degree. So it's going to be a hardship. And what I'm getting at is, is this a time now to be giving away $28 million of Everett taxpayer money to bring in
Well,
the building? What is the win for Everett in doing this? At the end of the day, there has to be the win.
sure. So for me, I think the turning point with this project was that they had reached out several months ago behind the scenes, and they had called counselors individually, and they gave us a large scope of what they wanted to do. They gave an overload of information, and they said, do you think this is something you could support? And my answer at the time was, I'm not going to give you an answer right now. I'll review it, and if any questions come up, I'll let you know. So in my experience so far with various developers, they had been the most sincere in their approach. They had been the most communicative in their approach, asking counselors for feedback, where a lot of times a lot of developers come and I feel like they're just like, this is what we want to do, and if you don't like it, too bad. And that's been my experience with a lot of the other ones, with the exception of this. So for one,
show me the money. Where's the money? Show me the money. They're communicating about where's the win for Everett.
Well, so for me, the win for Everett is when they started talking about veterans. And I think about some of my friends that served in Afghanistan that can no longer afford a house in Everett, so they had to move out of town. That to me is a shame. I think it's a shame that my friend, right. So if it's not perfect, I know it's not perfect, but the big sell for me was that this would be essentially the largest housing project addressing veterans at all in the state. So if Everett can go on the map for that, to me,
then the payoff is there. Then the payoff is there for you. Okay.
So to me, I mean, if I could wave a magic wand and make the entire building veterans, or make it, just Everett residents, or perfect, but you kind of realize as you're going, you have to work with what you've got. And I think that they have really tried to hear different counselors' perspectives and concerns and take those into consideration in this project, which I respect. So it was that was the turning point for me, was that if we can help veterans out in Everett, rather than leaving a piece of land that's blighted. I mean, it's not taking away from anything. We're not taking away anything like a school or other housing to put this up. It's in an area that is also non-disruptive to the rest of the community. A lot of the developers that I see too, they come into a neighborhood like the one that I live in, where there's just regular houses, and they want to build 16 units where there was previously a one family.
Yeah.
For me, this project is on 2nd Street, and if you look around it, there's already development that preceded what was going on that's big like that. So to me, it fits that area. I don't think it's appropriate to have that kind of a project over on Elm Street, but I think for me, it's about the location of where it is. Doesn't affect the rest of the community as much as other projects do either. So there's the veteran win, and the location win. So those were the two things that were really important in influencing me.
Okay, so kudos. All right, then that expands my horizon a little bit. After I was done working for the City of Everett, eventually I wound up with the VA as a vocational rehabilitation specialist. And the program that I worked within was called HVSEP, Homeless Veteran Supported Employment Program. And it was about combining employment with housing issues. So, as far as, my heart being dedicated to veterans, in that realm and in all aspects, I think I've proven that pretty well, nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly, that's certainly good cause to have some passion, to try to drive it forward. I still think the money issue is going to be there for the residents, and I wish there was a way to accomplish all that without having to give the money away.
Yeah.
It happened in Charlestown with the same company, from what I understand. I don't blame Brown or Fulcrum. They're businessmen. They want to go after the best possible deal they can get. It just makes me wonder, if they say it can't be a profitable venture if this TIF is not involved, how stable their financing structure is to begin with. If it's a risky venture without a TIF, it's a risky venture in general. And why would a savvy businessman want to go ahead and do that? So these are the questions that come up in my mind. But I think your I mean, it seems like it's gonna go through, but I think it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be backlash from the residents on it, especially next time they see a tax bill. This is what they're gonna be thinking of. All right. Can I continue on to another question?
Absolutely.
Do you have time?
Of course.
Curious one that caught you a little bit of crossfire. That and it's kind of, I get the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, and one saying do it, one saying don't. It's kind of a split thing, and it's on the NIP issue.
Yep.
That so when I talk about the different shoulders there, because of my personal experiences and my background, I would I'd be a favorite anything that would really prohibit public use of alcohol in general. I've seen it. I've seen it destroy me. I saw it destroy my family. I saw it destroy my extended family, people around me, and things like that. But that can't be the catalyst for, a litter issue or something like that. So I get this one thing that they'd like to be in the sale of nips, and I'm kind of, oh yeah, I'd love to see the ban of all alcohol. At the same time, I'm very much a rights oriented person. And a business, I was a businessman as well. I own my own business too. So, and this being an entrepreneur, just an outright ban on the sale of nips. Number one, to me, inhibits on the rights of the retailer, of the business, to be competitive, and distinguishing, the legislation, the ordinance that you propose is an ordinance. Am I correct? Is that what you
Yes.
propose?
So it would be an ordinance, but it would be under the jurisdiction of the licensing board. So the council itself has no say in it.
Great. Well, and that's kind of one area I was going to go to, because, sale and distribution of liquor, doesn't that come under really state level ABC? Aren't they the ones that really should be in charge of legislating anything? The state should be in charge of legislating something along those lines. They seem to have more domain over that than the licensing board. Licensing, of course, but you're right. It's on the distribution end, and that's where licensing comes in. It just, to me, it feels like an infringement. So, but then again, what's the bottom line goal here? The bottom line goal is it to reduce the trash, or is it to reduce the sight of nip bottles amongst the trash? Let's face it. You go by areas, you see them all littered with beer cans and nip bottles. You're not just saying the place has a litter problem. You're saying the place has an alcohol problem too.
And
it reflects on the character of the people in there. So, I think your motives are good, but isn't this a way kind of to legislate a little bit of morality by just focusing on the nips? In other words, I think your legislation is sound, but shouldn't it just be on litter in general?
so
And that removes the sale portion that you're going after, the prohibited sale, which I think infringes.
So it definitely has become one of the most complicated issues that I've tried to address since I've been up there. I can assure you of that, and I do understand both perspectives. Just as an update, so as of June 12th, there was a licensing board meeting, and the licensing board, which consists of 3 members, really urged for a statewide solution, which is what a lot of residents and store owners also have urged for. And my perspective on that is that in some articles that I've read over the past few years, because this isn't a new issue, this is an issue that's been talked about for several years now in the city of Everett and surrounding communities. It seems like that statewide action is lagging. And so
you want to push it?
Right. So the understanding was that there really wasn't a statewide solution, because there wasn't any changes happening that we could see, and the nip litter continues. So now we're kind of back to the state, where what I'm doing is I put a piece on the agenda to invite Senator Sal DiDomenico and State Rep Joe McGonigal to come up and talk about what solutions they're working on at a state level. So I think they're going to come up in August, or at least Sal confirmed that he would come up. And one of his proposals that we don't know if it's actually going to fully go through or not, but he's going to get into depth about it, is a bottle redemption that would include nips. So,
safe. Yeah.
so I think he's trying to push for not only that, but also that all bottles go to 10 cents as well. So it's not just 5 cents. So up to 10 cents and to include nips, which I think.
I always wondered how much redemption programs actually reduce the litter. I do know it gave some people another source of income to collect bottles going around, and turning them in for the nickel or the dime. But at least it's a step in the right direction. You're going to have multi-level government looking at this, and that's the approach to it for sure. It's hard to focus in on the NIPS itself, but like you said, it's a very complicated. Legally speaking, it's a very complicated issue, and it's just not a slam dunk to go ahead and do something like that.
Mhm.
But I applaud the goal of trying to reduce it. It's just you got to be pragmatic. Is that a virtual background you got behind you, Katie?
Nope, this is my actual studio.
Is that a fireplace?
It's an electric fireplace.
You could have lied to me. I never would have known the difference. All right. So if I can, I got really one more good one I can pick your brain on, because I haven't been able to get any answers on this. And you probably won't have the answer either, but I suspect, being the person you are, you'll try to get some. Soccer stadium.
Mm.
So I have a little backstory. I happen to be searching for some aerial photographs of that area because I was working on putting together a video. And as I keyed in on the area that the proposal for the stadium was going to be, I couldn't help but notice Schnitzer's right beside it there, Revolution Recycling.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the aerial photograph, and what I'm appealing to here is your green streak, your environmental knowledge, because I think this will raise questions in your mind. So it's quite clearly that the place almost glows. It's a rust brown. When you look at the satellite photo, you can see exactly where the property lines are of that, and it's pretty close to abutting the stadium property. Now, you're probably familiar with and even know the people at the Conservation Law Foundation.
I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, all right. So way back a bit ago, they went after Schnitzer Revolution Recycling for pollution, and ultimately they entered into a settlement where I believe the company was going to pay $2 million, enhance their cleanup efforts, do certain remediations and things like that. So pretty sizable thing. And when the proposal came out for the stadium, I tried to get information on what Schnitzer's position was on this, because they're bound by a legal agreement here on that $2.5 million settlement, to maintain certain standards and what have you. The property itself and the business itself it's a multi-million dollar, it's close to $1 billion industry. They don't want to give up that site. I'm sure of it. I'm 100% sure of it. So what is Schnitzer's position when it comes to all these promises being made on the stadium? Oh, we're going to remediate the land. We're going to do this. Well, they're not going to just remediate out to the property line. Schnitzer's Revolution is going to have a role in this. They're not publicly taking any position on it, which puts my radar up big time. How are they going to negotiate the contract settlement there? And are they going to go along with the proposal, or are they going to fight it in court? Now, why does that make a difference? Why would we really want to know all that now? Well, for the main reason is, what the hell's the sense of going 5 years down the road with Crafting Company if they're prohibited from building, then they can walk away from this agreement, and then the city has wasted 5-7 years on marketing out that land. So nobody's doing the deep dive on this, or somebody's holding back information. There's a reason for this silence. I encourage you, I beg you to get underneath it and let the residents know what the hell's going on, because I'm not really a gambling man, but if I was, as they say, I bet something's afoot here. and it's going to be a very problematic issue if it's not looked at right now. So that's my soapbox, and I appreciate your time. I'm going to kind of wrap it up now, unless there's anything you'd like to throw in there at the end.
So regarding the stadium, it hasn't, nothing about that has been before the council officially. And a few months ago, I had the same concerns that you're sort of talking about, maybe not particularly pertaining to Schnitzer, but in general, that as we know that there's stadium talk, where is the council's involvement? Where is the community involvement in that? So a few months ago, I prompted a community meeting. So we've now officially had 2 community meetings that I don't necessarily know would have happened if that wasn't put on the agenda of the council. So it's too soon to take a stance on the stadium, I think, but I think at least starting the conversation is a step in the right direction, so that residents and councilors and everybody can have their feedback heard before decisions are finalized and it feels as if things are just happening without anyone's say.
Wouldn't it be nice to know that Revolution Recycling is on board with the plans going forward, better earlier rather than later?
Absolutely, yeah. It's worth looking at. I mean, there's a lot of questions right now and not a lot of answers. It's very preliminary.
Yeah, and I know that there were the 2 community meetings, and I kind of balk at that term, because one of them that I watched, if I'm correct, was at the Conley Center, and Kraft and his son walked in, wouldn't take any, nobody took any questions. I mean, how's that engagement with the community? Basically, they're giving a PR tour. They're going in, going out, and the community doesn't get any engagement that way. All they got was a dog and pony show. So there needs to be some exchange there, and of course, it needs to be on the ballot. But that's a personal opinion of mine as well. But no, I appreciate your position, and if you could look into that and just start articulating a little bit about what is their position. Are we going to have problems with this if you go forward? It's just a shame to waste all that time, all that land, all that money that's being put into this, and a ton of money's already been put into it. It'll all be for naught. So Everett can't take another kick in the ass. The taxpayer can't take another kick in the ass and lose more money for nothing. So I hope that something can come out of that. So again, appreciate your time. And I hope you consider us getting together again and doing some follow up discussions, so you can share more of your views on this stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you reached out, and anytime you have a question, feel free. I'm happy to connect.